My name is Raquel Douglas. I am the head of athlete partnerships at Snapchat, doing all things related to the athlete sports world and all creators truly that are on the platform in any way, and just teaching them all the resources to be successful. I've worked in all different areas, I think, in sports over the last 10 years, whether that's marketing, sales, producing, and all different types of things. So excited to talk with you all here today.
And I am, it's a hard act to follow, Raquel. I am Leah Beasley. I am the executive associate AD over external at the University of Oklahoma. I've been here for, I think my 1 year anniversary is coming up like next week, maybe. But so at Oklahoma, we kind of structure things a little bit differently. We have about 8 units that make up the external team. So it's sponsorships in sport. It is creative and video and TV broadcast and marketing and fan engagement. We have ticket sales and ticket operations, and we have creative design and photography and social media and digital strategy, and then a little bit of fundraising in there. So a lot of different areas that fall into external here at Oklahoma. Previously, I was at Mississippi State for about almost 9 years and doing a similar role. I had marketing, and then I grew into the external role. And then before that, I was at my alma mater, which is Louisiana Tech, and worked there for a few years in game management and marketing. And then was a softball player while I was in college. So that's kind of how my sports background has grown. So looking forward to today's discussion.
So much experience. Oh my goodness. I'm going to start with Raquel with Snapchat. Snapchat is, I've heard so much about it. I mean, I'm on it, but it is talked about a lot, especially with athletes. And there's a new creator program. Can you talk a little bit more about how athletes are using this program to help with their name, image, and likeness?
Yeah, so what's really interesting at Snap, it's crazy because I joined Snap maybe a week before the NIL law passed, right? So I remember having this conversation. I was like, hey, what are we going to do? Is this part of the world that we're going to, venture? And it's like, no way, because we didn't work with college athletes on Snap before. It was like something new. They were still considered technically amateur athletes. A week later, the law passed, and it's like, well, we can't miss this opportunity. So, last year we worked with over 200 college athletes and just really investing in them. And the goal of that was to just touch as many campuses as we could and just show everyone like, hey, Snap is back. It's here to stay. There's a lot of new creator-focused programs that will allow creators to just really grow their brand and just support their NIL journey. And honestly, just tell the story. The better you tell your story, the more NIL options you get. So Snap has we've done a really good job of just really growing our network of college students. I think we had over 200 different schools and, more than 60 different, sports and all different types of things. So it's been really great to see the colleges and the college students really just take to Snap as if they wouldn't anyway. That the whole thing was this was the target audience, right? And so it's been a really great opportunity to connect with them. And we have people like Olivia Dunn now, we have the Cavender twins, we have Flau'jae. Just alone, we've worked with all of them. So this week. So it's been really good that they're using it to grow their brands.
It's so cool to see that evolution. And Leah, as somebody, you have talked about your experience is so broad. There's so much. How have you seen women's sports evolve at the collegiate level?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we were actually talking about this as a department yesterday because we have a writer who is going to do a story on the success of women's sports at OU specifically. Everybody knows about OU softball. Like they're a different league of their own. That was a meeting I was coming from, is compliance, where I just had a chat with Patty. You might have heard Patty Gesso's comments about we're going to play a softball game in the football stadium, right? So we're working on that. But there's just a league of their own. But there's other women's sports here too. We had attendance records in soccer, volleyball, women's tennis, and women's basketball this year. And so we pitched, a story to our writer. We're gonna have a video piece to it, some creative content around it, just to really showcase over 1 year. Again, we've been growing our women's programs at OU for a while at the vision of Joe Castiglione, our athletic director, but it has been so immense this last year, and it's been amazing. Obviously, competition on the court is in the field. That's paramount. Like you got to have that success, but our fans are showing up. People want to watch women's sports. And it is something that if we as athletic administrators aren't supplying support and mentorship and the avenues for these women to be successful, like Raquel was talking about, how can we help them with their personal brand and then also the brand of OU? So, Raquel, you might agree with me, like our jobs are not only for the company that we work for now. Like for me, it's OU. It used to be where La Tech, Mississippi State, whatever it is, that's for that brand and for that school. Now we are kind of divvying out resources to punch into the student athlete specifically. We're having individual branding sessions. We're using, groups like Snapchat, like TikTok, whatever it may be, to help our student athletes and guide them on what they can do to monetize NIL and just their overall brand. Some of our student athletes aren't necessarily interested in NIL, but they are interested in a sustainable brand management tool. How can they better present themselves in their future world? Because maybe they're not going to go pro. Maybe they want to just, be not just, but maybe they want to own their own business. And so how can we help them with our tools and our experience to then help them be successful in the brand? And then in turn, is it going to help OU? Like our job is still to work for the university or the organization or company that we do. So it's kind of like we have almost two bosses and we've got to adapt in that space. And I'm really, as a former softball player, it's really cool to see the growth of women's sports in especially these last few years. And social media has helped with that a ton. I don't think we would be where we are if we didn't have those tools for our student athletes to express themselves, to be honest.
Yeah.
And Raquel, I feel like that's where Snapchat can really come into play because it can provide kind of a behind the scenes look at somebody's life. I know like when I post on my public stories, it's like kind of stuff that you don't see me post on TikTok. It's behind the scenes, what I'm doing, where I'm going.
Exactly.
What ways can athletes use Snapchat to have a better like presence and provide a bigger look at what they're doing outside of their sport?
I think you said just that, right? I think that every platform has their specialties. And I think, I'll let them speak on theirs, but I think for us, it is the behind the scenes. And I think social media has been evolving into a vision of perfection. And I think that Snapchat still takes the pressure off of the average athlete who may not be a creator. So they're a little adverse to being on social media. But I think Snapchat allows like a safe haven of just being able to just do your regular life. We want to see you in the locker room, getting your ankles taped up. And, you'll often see Jason Tatum's, he snaps every day and it'll be like him getting his ankle wrapped or, something just so regular or, what, Olivia's eating for lunch and things like that, because it allows you to, I feel like it's the only platform where it allows you to have a personal narrative still. It really is social. And you really are back to just the old ways of just communicating your story and like the basics core of social media. I feel like you're allowed to do here and it's easy. It's point and shoot. So you don't need to have this big production team and have all these high resolution photos or anything. You just have to you have to click your post.
You could do stories and then spotlight, right?
Exactly. So stories are just your narrative, your storytelling, a day in the life, but every day. But it's like, when you talk about donors and fans and Oklahoma, like they have people that are just so invested in this school. So just think, well, what is my scholarship money going to and things like that. It's really cool to be like, what are the softball players taking advantage of with all this donors and these new activities that they're getting, right? Like what does food look like for them? What do their workouts look like? So that's really cool. And then Spotlight, of course, that's our version of short form user generated content, right? So still staying relevant with the trends on social media, but just giving you that separate outlet as well. So you have the trendy side, which is our UGC, and then you have our story side, which is just personal narrative and storytelling.
And Leah, is that an avenue that you see athletes using at Oklahoma, and B, do you see that it kind of correlates with the people that are interested? Does it gain more interest?
Absolutely. And what we're trying to do, so we have a digital strategy manager, and she kind of handles the trends that are coming up. So I'm over here taking notes on what Raquel's saying. I'm like, okay, I got to make sure I know about this because she does. And so I'm trying to stay up on it too. But we're trying to guide our student athletes. They oftentimes know, a lot more than we might know about the kind of behind the scenes stuff and what they want to be putting out there. But how can we, because we've experienced this and we've experienced these different trends and fads up and down, how can we best position them on what to say, what is the content, how can we help, and then how can we help amplify that? So I think that's a big part of our jobs, is whatever they're doing, how can we amplify it, and then how can we see it and catch it, and then maybe that's a storyline that we can then expand upon later, on something else that we do that maybe other fans aren't getting to see. Like if you have your certain following, how can we take what's been popular there and what fans are, or what that student athletes fans are loving seeing, and then how can we take that and take it to a different channel? And it may not work, like Raquel's saying, like there's different avenues, and it kind of works differently on whatever platform you're using, whatever you're trying to post. What's your goal? What are you trying to get across? Is it behind the scenes? Is it more trendy? Whatever. Is it everyday content? How can we then take that and kind of reach across the aisle and expand it into additional followers, additional fans who maybe didn't see it on a certain type of platform at a certain time of the day? So I think that's part of our jobs as well, is to kind of help guide that and then help amplify it in everything that we're doing. Because again, it is number one, student athlete, number two, fan. Like everything that we're doing is for the student athlete and fan experience. And that shift has been pronounced. I mean, it has been really clear over the last, especially couple years, of where we have to adjust as administrators, or we're not doing right by our student athletes. And they're going to find a school and leaders who are, if we aren't.
And
Yeah.
Raquel sorry, were you?
No, I was agreeing. We're seeing that every day. It's crazy. It's a lot of pressure on the college side. I mean, that transfer portal, it's cool because I totally understand it from a student standpoint. Like you should go where you feel wanted and comfortable. But then as a school standpoint, I can see how that causes a lot of pressure.
It
does. So we gotta stay up. We gotta be there.
And for any athlete that wants to get started on Snapchat or wants to use Snapchat, what's that process like?
I think it's always the same, right? Get on Snapchat and start using it. That's the most important thing. Usually I'll find you if you're using Snapchat and I don't know about you. Usually I'll have an email, a DM with something, and I'll find you because someone's like, look at this player. Or, a lot of times I'm just scrolling through the spotlight feed. I'm just like, wow, we don't know who this person is. And I'm, finding them and reaching out. And then obviously I do my sort of outreach where I have different teams and schools, and I try to go visit schools and just anyone who's interested, they usually find their way here. But I think the most important thing is to get on Snapchat and post, because you don't need to be verified to have visibility on Snap, and that's what's really cool. The way we encourage our users to use the platform is to post a lot of snaps. The point is to tell a story, right? So if you're doing those things, you're telling a day in a life and you're giving me 40 snaps a day, you're going to populate at some point the Discover page, and people who don't follow you are going to start following you, and it's going to start. So we have a really cool algorithm in that way where it just really focuses on storytelling. And so, yeah, I say use it. And, if you're really, really interested, I say this with caution, reach out to me.
I'm taking notes right now. Not for me, but nobody wants to see that. But we have a lot of student athletes.
Everybody's welcome on Snap. But yes, anyone.
Oh, I have it, but you're not going to see me. You're not going to see me on
yeah.
Page. Yeah. Will not be.
And, I like to give people best practices, things, give them tips and tools. What Snap looks like right now, it did not look like 2 years ago. So it's still, the core is there, but we really have so many fun things for creators that we've added to really just enhance, everyone's life on Snap. Our filters do really cool things. Our maps do really cool things. We have Bitmojis, we have Spotlight now. So we have We have groups on college campuses. You'll see join your college, things like that. So there's a lot of really cool things. And sometimes it just takes a quick little user session to just, wipe off the dust of like the old habits of Snap and just become the best.
Nice.
And is there monetization in that for the athletes?
Yes. So if you've heard, we publicly announced our monetization program recently about 2 weeks ago, I think. And basically this program allows creators to monetize off their stories through an ads and creator stories program. So basically what that looks like is, you're posting all your snaps, and in between your certain snaps, you will get an ad. When you get an ad, that is an opportunity to create revenue for yourself. And then there is an ad share revenue that the creator receives. And that is another way to, monetize. And, you've seen articles. Alyssa McKay makes $1 million last year. When it wasn't public, we kind of had like a beta program. And it's true. She did make that much money. And, at the end of the day, all she did was snap. Tell a snap story every day. And she committed to telling a snap story every day. She took us in her journey. She got surgery. She went to Coachella. Like, we got to see all these really cool things. What happens behind the scenes in a surgeon's office? What happens behind the scenes with Coachella? Get ready with me. What did we eat? What did we cook? Who did we meet? Let's do a recap. So, just really having all those experiences will really create the best opportunity for creators to monetize off their stories.
I love that. That's so amazing. And it provides such a deeper look, but also with women's sports on the rise, like it's so easily accessible, and it gives another avenue that you're able to follow and even just tap into women's sports. Like if somebody comes up on your page, then bam, like you learn about that school, that sport, the player, whoever that you're seeing. And I love that accessibility. And
well, Logan, you're super right, not to cut you off, but it's like one thing I noticed after working with just in this one program, 200 athletes. One thing I noticed is that the women are the leaders in the NIL space. They are the creators, they are the leaders. So although you think you may just be you're not going to the NBA, right? Or the NFL, what I'm seeing is those are not my strongest creators on Snap. My strongest creators are the field hockey player, the rower, somebody out the box who's taking advantage of where they are. They may not, be going to the NBA, but you never know what they might do down the line. And just having this footprint to just start, even if they just say, I want to go to business school after, they finish, right? Just having this really cool imprint and saying, I created this brand for myself will most likely get you into any school you want to go to. So it can be used in so many ways, but the women are really taking over. They get the creator thing. So I say, no matter what sport you're in, how much playing time you get. Some of my best football players are D3 athletes, but they kill it as creators because they're taking advantage of any momentum they have, and they're into it and they're flipping it. So I really congratulate anyone who tells their story every day, because people are watching, and it'll really pay off in the long run for your personal brand.
Goes right into what our jobs are too, as being in collegiate athletics, and my job doesn't necessarily depend on wins and losses, but at the same time, yes, my job ebbs and flows with wins and losses, but I can't control that. So what can I control? I can control the storytelling. I can control if I can help a fan fall in love with a student athlete just as that person, and the student athlete then helps me tell that story based on their storytelling. So if that student athlete is, they love animals, and then that they're interacting with their animals at their house, or they're interacting with others, or they're interacting at a shelter, whatever it may be, that student athlete can monetize that. We can then use that to help push the program, especially if they may not be getting as many dubs as other programs. Because if a fan is falling in love with that student athlete, they're going to support them regardless of the score on the scoreboard at the end of the day. So I think that between what I'm trying to do, or Kel's trying to do, is ultimately in different verticals, but at the same time, I think the goal at the end of the day is the same. So it's kind of cool to hear Raquel, your story as well. And I'm telling you, I might try to get you to come train some of our student athletes over here in Norman.
Give me a call.
Let's go.
I never been to Oklahoma, but okay.
Hey, I'll tell you this, it's more than you think it is. I'm telling you. Trust me.
Okay, okay. Let's find out. I'm open to it.
Oh, all right, I'm gonna look you up.
And Leah, with all of your experience, I'm so keen to know how the differences between the men's sports and the women's sports have changed throughout the years, and even maybe in more recent years, especially being at a big school like Oklahoma and having experience at other schools. What has that been like?
I'll say it's a really good issue to have, but we win a lot of freaking championships here, so it's really cool. Like it's a good, your team is it's cycles, yes, but you're always like on an upward trajectory. And so men, women's sports, doesn't matter, we're on that path. And so that's kind of what's really cool too, is that you're not, yes, there's disparities. Let's I'm not going to ignore that. I'm not going to insult our women, our female student athletes to say that there's not, because there are. However, we are closing that gap. Hallelujah. Like we are closing the gap between men's and women's sports and the opportunities that are available because of platforms like Snap, platforms, like any other social media that our student athletes are on, because now they're making their own money, they're in control of their own fate, and then what we can do is help them. So I think that's pretty cool to see, is that we are trying to close that gap. But at Oklahoma specifically, it's really cool because in a 2-week time span, we were about to win the Big 12 in 3 different sports, and 2 of those were women's. We had just come off of a national championship of women's gymnastics, and then going right into, we had softball that was already going on. Then softball just won the Big 12. Women's tennis won the Big 12. Our men's golf team won the Big 12. So you're talking about, it's not gender specific. A lot of things are. I'm not discounting that, but I am saying that it's kind of cool to be at a program where the best and the standard doesn't matter what the gendered sport is. So I think that's cool for me personally, because it hasn't been that way always. But here it is. And we are giving as many opportunities as we possibly can, regardless of the sport. And we have basically an asset bank that we're covering regardless of what sport it is, regardless of how much money that sport brings in or the student athletes bring in, we're still offering those large opportunities. So I think that's really cool to see that gap kind of lessening, and it needs to continue that way.
Yeah, of course. The increased accessibility, going back to that, is so important. And social media has been such a huge factor in that, which is especially why I love like Snapchat behind the scenes look. Is there anything else that like you find is really hitting on Snapchat for athletes, whether it's, I don't know, maybe swimming or like any other sport, any cool things, maybe something that's not related to their sport?
I think all athletes just tell stories differently. I don't think there's one thing that stands out. I think that I particularly love outside of the box. Just not the typical, popular sports. I think it's really cool to have swimmers and see what they're doing in diving. I mean, that stuff does great. Gymnastics too, right? Like they do fantastic on our platform. I don't have anybody from softball that stands out to me at the moment, but I think it's just really cool to show other sides of what's going on. Flau'jae does really good. She has a whole nother like outside, life outside of school. So, I think it just really depends on what you show. I think on Snap, you can make the most regular things interesting.
Yeah, there's certainly room to create your own avenue. And even
Yeah.
if you don't see something, if you've even a question that you've asked one of your teammates, go and put that on Snap, answer a question. And they do have the question boxes, right, on stories?
Yeah, you can do the story replies. You can interact in a way that's just so comfortable and fun. You can do, polls, maps, and all those things. So I've seen people do so many things. You can use maps and go on food tours. You can do, you can have a show on Discover if that fits. Like there's just so many things. So I think just it depends on who you are, right? If you like food, then you talk about all your food all the time on Snap. Maybe your goal is to have a food show after school or something like that. But, fashion, I have, women who do fashion as well. So I think it's really cool. I think the opportunity it's so easy on Snap, I would say, just because you really do control it. And there really is just so much room to do whatever you want.
Yeah, and we have a question from the Q&A for Leah. and it asks, have you seen growth in interest in other sports due to the success of sports like softball?
Absolutely. Whenever we're recruiting, so I'm often involved in our recruiting conversations and talking to student athletes or prospects when they come to campus, and we'll take them, like we'll kind of maybe just happen to have Patty, kind of walking down the hall, whatever it may be. Like, people want to be associated with winners. Like, that's just period. And what Patty and Coach Gasso and that crew have been able to do is it's unparalleled. And so we want to do whatever we can do and so does she. Like, we all know that other sports successes are good for everybody. So that's why we try to have that baseline of promotion. Like, we're going to be doing billboards for everybody. It's not just, oh, the national champion gets a billboard. So yeah, we are seeing that collaboration across the aisle. So we always talk about cross promotion in our world of marketing and fan engagement. You want to cross promote anytime you can, but when you have a chance, or you want to capitalize that however you can. So all of our sports get involved. All our sports are congratulating that sport. They're doing, they'll do handshakes where it's national champion. Like, you're trying to showcase that, because not only is it good for the student athletes, they're seeing that they are going to get more eyeballs and more attention and more worth, more fan affinity for themselves and their own brand, as well as OU. It's literally a win-win-win for everybody when our sports are succeeding. And so, because softball is such an outlier, they literally live on a different planet, then they are seen as stars. And so when we have different prospects come in town and it does couple up with a softball game, we'll definitely utilize that. And it's to our detriment if we don't. If you're not trying to cross promote and you're not trying to showcase and celebrate the successes of every other sport and student athlete, then we're failing them. And then we're failing the sport that we're recruiting to. So that's why you see, student athletes going to football games, and you're taking them to a softball game where we just sold out the stadium. We sell out every single time. And we had 9,000 at Hall of Fame Stadium in Oklahoma City, and 9,000 at a softball game is just unheard of. And so you're celebrating that, and you're discussing that with other prospects, because you're showing them the investment that we're making in all of our sports across the board. So our rowers, they understand that too. We're investing in them through social media platforms like, Influencer and Open Doors, because they can control their own brand. Obviously, they can do whatever they want on their own personal social media. We'll help them there too, if they would like. But we're providing additional resources like influencers, like Open Doors. Not many schools have both, and we do, because we understand that they're offering different things. We want to give our student athletes the biggest tool chest that they can have. And we've seen a lot of success, especially in our women's sports, with that. But how are we, that's specific to the student athlete? And you'll always see us be consistent in our messaging with Women of Championship Excellence Fund. That fund has grown immensely over the last couple of years. And so you're not only talking about the student athlete, but hey, this 50-year-old fan, thank you. We're thanking them every time we win a championship. We have our student athletes thank them. We have our administrators. We send them emails. We send them text messages. We send them we're putting billboards up thanking them, because it wouldn't be successful if we didn't have those donors. And so we're thanking that. And we're saying, hey, by the way, you want to continue the success. You want to keep on your own social media, Miss Smith, Mr. Smith, whatever. If you want to keep touting that and keep having those pride points to your own group of circle of friends, then keep investing in us, because we'll continue to raise that standard. We'll continue to win those championships if we have your support. So it's a constant tie to Women of Championship Excellence Fund and our ICF Invest in Champions Fund. So when we have a guy go pro in the NFL like we just had, then we're saying, hey, thank you. We did this because of you. So it's all a tie. It literally is a huge cyclic, like a synergy that's kind of married that we're trying to provide. So yeah, really long-winded answer for that question, but I would be remiss if I didn't touch on just our approach of how we're investing back in our student athletes.
I will say, when I first got into softball and talking about it, even watching it, Oklahoma was one of the first games, and I was stunned by what I was seeing. First of all, because they're amazing, but the fans are so invested in the players. It's like a huge community, like a neighborhood. And like their version of, I guess, a pro team, like it's pro status that they have, which I mean, to plug Snapchat, that would be an amazing mix to get behind the scenes, but it's really
Oh.
interesting to see that relationship.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yep,
look,
come on.
when I was coming up, softball was always popping on my campus back then. So I'm glad that it's continuing to just grow and show love and just all women's sports. It's been really cool to see.
Absolutely.
I saw another sellout the other day. I've been on this topic for a while, volleyball, and I saw them sell out at Nebraska. And I'm just like, I saw it last year, but then I saw it again this year. And I've been telling people, I was like, you guys, like, this is serious. Like, you can't like not notice, volleyball and softball selling out and not think that, we're not in an emergence. It's like a really good time to be involved in women's sports.
100%. Couldn't say it better.